Hi, I'm Nick Barron, Senior Director of Partner Enablement over at Contentstack, and I want to talk a little bit today about some of the challenges that brands are facing. Some of these challenges are going to include things like having personalization at scale and doing this across a variety of channels and touchpoints in a true omni-channel perspective. And I'm happy to mention that we've just partnered with Conscia, a world-class personalization engine that also takes some of the same approaches that we do to help us deal with some of these issues. So let's take a step back a little bit first and think about how the personalization efforts of web teams have happened in the past. Right? You'll typically have your web content sitting on a web server somewhere with some web personalization baked in. Now, the issue here is that that is going to work fine for a single channel and typically a single touch point, since personalization efforts have historically required a little bit of hard coding into the front end of choice that's being used. Now, when we think about where we are today with a modern architecture, mock framework, headless approaches, API-first platforms all working together, we now have a great opportunity to enable businesses to have more of a conversation with their customers. And what I mean by that is, if we think of the old adage of content is king, well, I think we can change that now to conversations are king. Which makes me think, what is a conversation? Well, a conversation is content and context. So when an individual is interacting with a brand on any channel or touch point, they want to acquire some knowledge or a product or a service or something. There's an event that they are looking for when dealing with any brand. And the best way to enable that is to allow for conversations to happen. And those conversations also then need to be transient from one channel to another channel and continue along in the same conversation. So as we talked about before, right, that is not necessarily something that brands have been doing well historically, because you have your personalization efforts and your content efforts on mobile, and you have the same but different on web, and a lot of future sort of channels and touch points weren't even thought about. So things like smart skills on your Alexa speakers, or using things like AR and VR. So when we think about what our customers are actually doing, or what brands and organizations are doing, is they're trying to have these conversations. They're trying to push information and messaging out to the individual across all of these channels, and that's quite hard. So by partnering up and pairing up technologies like Contentstack, a headless CMS, and Conscia, a headless personalization engine, we're really able to take omni-channel content and we're able to push that out at the right time to the right person at the right place, wherever it is that they happen to be interacting with the brand. And that's a very powerful thing. And it all starts at the content side, right? So we need to be able to have true omni-channel content. We don't want to store anything as HTML. We don't want things to be web specific, because we need that content, that same content, to be able to be served up regardless of channel or touch point. And that's something that we've done historically extraordinarily well. Now, when you combine that with something like Conscia's ability to create one set of rules, one set of personalization goals and orchestrations, that's going to allow those same conversations that are being stored in a truly omni-channel perspective to be disseminated out whenever that user, that individual, is actually interacting and requesting that conversation. So we're really happy that this partnership is moving forward, and that we're able to enable all of our businesses and brands. But more importantly, the real benefit is to the end user, to the customer, because you're now going to have a better chance of getting the right information that you're looking for, right? You're going out to a brand and you're asking for something, and what you hope is that the information that you can get can be delivered quickly, accurately, appropriately, and on whatever channel and touch point you are on.
Thanks very much for that, Nick. We're really excited to be partnering with Contentstack. The entire Contentstack team has been really awesome to work with, and we're looking forward to bringing a very powerful omni-channel personalization capabilities to our joint customers. So now let's get into it.
Conscia delivers one-to-one personalized experiences to every customer by connecting the dots between customer and content in every context. Personalization available as a service, which means that the personalization engine delivers contextual content via APIs to any channel or device. The content is delivered at lightning speeds as the engine sits on the edge, specifically Cloudflare. Conscia is backend agnostic, which means that it can connect to and source content from any content source that is accessible via APIs. Before I go ahead with how we manage the experience in Conscia, I'll talk briefly through Conscia's Headless Experience Framework. In this framework, we have channels, templates, and components. A channel is essentially a touch point that the customer uses to interact with the brand. This could be your website, mobile app, email, or even the Internet of Things. A template, on the other hand, defines the structure or layout of a specific page or screen. Note that the same template can be shared across two different channels. For example, you can have a home page on your website or a home screen on mobile, and they may have the same content, just rendered differently. And lastly, components could be visual or logical and can have dependencies between each other. For instance, you may have a logical component such as a customer profile, which fetches a profile from a CDP in real time. That component in turn feeds into the recommended articles component to get relevant articles for a specific customer for one-to-one personalization. For this demo, I've set up a web page for a mock real estate brand called Conscia Apartments. Here's the home page. The page has four main components: promotional banner, featured properties, featured apartments, and popular articles. The featured properties and featured apartments are both coming from a legacy backend, which is a topic for a different video. The content for the promotional banner and popular article components are both being sourced from Contentstack. Let's take a look at how this content is modeled. So I just want to say a couple things about this headless CMS. Contentstack is an enterprise-grade platform that makes content editing a breeze. Creating this demo with Contentstack as the backend content source was super easy. The interface is intuitive, and you can create a new content model and start creating content in minutes. Let's assume as a content editor you've created banner and article content in Contentstack. You can see this from the content types in the left. Note that even though this content is being rendered on a web page, there's no reason why it can't be reused for other channels, as Contentstack is a completely headless CMS. Let's take a quick look at articles. You'll notice that each content record has various fields and tags. Contentstack's Content Delivery API exposes various ways of filtering the content based on the different types of logical criteria. This is used by Conscia's Experience Engine to determine which content should be returned to the front end in a given context. Now, let's get into Conscia's Experience Management dashboard. The Experiences page gives you a top-down view of all of the various micro-experiences you are managing, starting with channel, expanding into templates, and then components. Here, business users have access to every component of a page, like the four we saw on the front end, and for each one of those components, they can manage which content variant is delivered through rules that connect the context of a customer with relevant and personalized content. Working in a truly headless approach means we can reuse components across different templates. Here, you can see the promotional banner component shared across both the homepage template and the search page template. Likewise, templates can be shared across two different channels to help create a consistent omni-channel experience. Conscia offers personalization at the component level, which eliminates the need to define a brand new page for every context. Because pages are made of multiple components, page variants are dynamically generated based on the content variants for each component. Now, let's dive a little deeper into the rules that control what content variant is returned for a component with a given context. Each content variant is tied to a rule that has four important elements: the priority, start and end date, triggers, and the target. The priority determines which rule will win in case of a conflict. The start and end date determines the period during which this variant will run. Having an active start date and end date is more practical compared to the current approach when implementing personalization in headless CMSs, where you add a bunch of tags to account for the various contexts, and these tags don't have any expiry date. In the trigger section, you can define context fields that will activate the rule. When the real-time context matches the values defined here, the rule activates and the target experience is returned. In this target section, we can select the content record or records that should be returned. Note that along with the selection of the content record, this section allows you to provide a set of key value pairs that you can return to the front end. These could be used for anything related to the presentation logic such as styling, layout, campaign, or tracking codes. When we originally created this component, we had the option of one of two types, static and dynamic. The behavior of this dropdown will change depending on the type that we had selected. In this case, for the promotional banner, we had selected static, and so it creates a connection to Contentstack as our content source and allows us to pick an individual record. Here in the dropdown, you can see the records that we saw earlier: social media, Instagram, upcoming. We mentioned earlier that there are different types of components: static components and dynamic components. This selection is made during creation time, as seen here. Static components allow you to handpick a set of content records from the content source for a given context. Dynamic components, on the other hand, provide a dynamic query or filter for the current context. Here's a simple example where we're using a tag to filter the content. Now, let's go back to our homepage and try out a few combinations. In this example, we have the same homepage called using two different contexts. The homepage on the right was called the customer context of new buyer. This context is used by the experience engine to identify the right content variant and return the content from Contentstack. You can see that the promo banner is changed to a seminar offering and articles have been personalized for the new buyer context. In another example, we can pass the actual customer ID as context. This will extract the customer segment from the CDP and then, in turn, use that to return personalized and relevant content based on the rules defined in the experience engine.
For organizations who are interested in experimentation and optimization, Conscia's components can also be set up for A/B testing. This allows business users to deliver different variants as part of the target experience. Each variant is driven by a content record and supports a variant identifier for campaign analytics. In addition to analytics, Conscia also supports in-dashboard previewing. This allows business users to simulate different contexts in order to view the target experience.
And that's all for this demo. Thanks so much for watching, and we hope you found this demo useful. Once again, we're really excited about our partnership with Contentstack. To learn more about Conscia or Contentstack, please feel free to visit our respective websites or reach out to one of us via LinkedIn.